This conference will now be recorded.
Joining us on the video, and then member Judy Douglas has joined us over on her phone with the audio. I will note we're also joined by Dave Nyman of Aero Hardware and Paint. I'm going to turn things over to the chair to call us to order and approve the minutes and approve the agenda. So
I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the June 29th meeting. Should we take attendance?
Yeah, well, Cindy, are we recording? Okay. Yeah, we will note that we have members Potts, Bruflat, Alexandria, and Metzen joining us by video, and then member Judy Douglas has joined us over the phone. So we do have a quorum present.
Okay. First item is approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that I second it.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carries. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the May 25th meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Metzen.
Second.
Okay, second, Remo. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none. Those in favor of approval of the minutes of the May 25th meeting signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Hearing no nays, we approve the minutes of the May 25th meeting. The next item is unfinished business. Oh, incidentally, just before this, you may be wondering why I'm sharing Russ's office tonight. I'm not trying to take over his job. I'm retired, but I still have things to do. And but technically, I'm not up to getting into these meetings with my face. And I want to also break in a little bit as being chair and you know, sort of develop my former extraordinary chair skills. Before we get back together in person, which we anticipate will be the August meeting. So let's hope that that all works out, because it would be really nice to get together again. So, okay,
Yeah.
let's deal with unfinished business. The first issue deals with the Aero Hardware front door. Russ, do you have any comments to make?
Yeah, as you'll recall, as part of the Central Business District ADA enhancement, accessibility enhancement grant program, we had an application from Aero Hardware for the installation of telescoping doorway system. At the meeting, at last month's meeting, there were some reservations expressed that perhaps the doorway would be too contemporary and wouldn't be appropriate given the location in the Heritage Preservation District. Dave Nyman from Aero Hardware is here tonight. And Dave and I have had some conversations this afternoon, and David has suggested that he is willing to alter his application and utilize the swinging door system, which was suggested by the HPC at the last meeting. If that is the case, then the next step would be to have Mr. Nyman provide some altered quotations for the cost, and then we'd move forward with basically just the administrative approval, as the only alteration that would be expected would be the installation of that exterior push button system. So you recall, those that are using the push button system did not come before the HPC for approval, again, given that the only exterior appearance would be the push button. Dave, I anticipated that you'd be here to advocate on your own behalf for the telescoping door. But can you confirm that you're willing to work with Mr. Tate at the insulated glass, and we'll get some quotes for the swinging doorway system?
Yeah, so I was talking with Jim Tate today and going over things and going over measurements, because our concern was, would we have room for two 36-inch doors that would be, you know, the handicap width? And we are down to a half an inch short, but he feels that he can make some modifications to make that work. And so he said he could make it work, but he said that really the price would not change from the telescoping versus the swinging doors because of the modification work he needs to do. So if the commission would be in favor of that, we would switch our request to two swinging doors, one swinging in, one swinging out, with a push button mounted probably on the side wall, because if you remember, the door is inset, and so right at the inset there would be where the button would be located in order for the door to open.
Very good. Thank you, Dave, for accommodating the commission on the matter. Always greatly appreciate your willingness to work with us. But if that's the case, then members, I will work with Dave to provide for an amended application. And again, then provide for the administrative approval as is being done with the other swinging door systems utilizing the push button entry. I guess I'd suggest if anyone had any questions or comments from the commission, perhaps now would be the appropriate time.
I'd like to make a comment that I think this is really very good. Thank you, Dave, for going to this extra trouble. And I sure hope it works out. We want the best solution possible, and so I hope that we can get something going here. I'm pretty sure it'll work out.
Yeah, Jim felt he could do that and make it work. My only concern is I was hoping I didn't have to wait for another month's meeting to get approval on it.
No, we should be good, Dave. You and I will get things worked out either later this week or early next week.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, with that said, with Dave's alteration, as far as the financing of the grant program, it may allow us to bring in one additional project. As they were scored by the committee that created the priorities, the next in line would be the Foot and Ankle Clinic on 3rd Street. Ms. McCabe has provided an application, and I then will work with her. And we'd like to bring that to you, and I'd ask if you would be willing to assemble in a special meeting 2 weeks from tonight on July 13th. And then if that works out, we would forego a meeting at the end of July. Would anyone be able to commit to that at this point?
No, this is a clown. No, an actual eagle.
Well, I will intend to schedule us with a special meeting then for the 13th. I didn't hear any vocal opposition. And then that would give us an opportunity to review the Foot and Ankle Clinic to see if that can get fitted into the financing.
Good.
The Foot and Ankle Clinic, you know, it's a contemporary building. It's not built at the turn of the century like many of the others. So I think we can get something approved for them that would be appropriate given the age and the construction methods of the Foot and Ankle Clinic building. So thank you again, Dave. I greatly appreciate your willingness to work with us, and again, it's always a pleasure. Oh, I didn't pick that up.
Do you need to take an official vote first?
No,
I know it's approved.
They were push button swinging
Do
doors.
I need to take an official vote
Administratively.
Okay. Okay. So I'll get together with Jim and then I'll get together with you and we can get going on it.
Very good. Sounds like a great plan. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to sign off then.
Okay, you bet. Have a great evening.
Yep.
Not sure he's clear on that.
Uh-huh.
If we're gonna have a special meeting, I don't think he knows that for sure. You'll have to,
Yeah, we don't need Dave at the special meeting.
Right.
So, yep. So, go on to the new business.
Okay, let's move on to the new business. The Central Business District new construction design standards.
Yeah, this was based upon some conversation we had, some preliminary discussions we had. The city council has entered into exclusive negotiating rights with, I believe it was Building Good Communities, Mankato organization that would look at providing for development on parking lot 5. At this point, they contemplate staged construction, 2 buildings. The first one being built at the intersection of Grace Street and 169. This building then would be orientated down Grace Street. And then as it would move forward, a second building would be proposed then to be south of that building, again, then orientated down Old Minnesota to the south. It would be proposed that there be a courtyard between the two to provide for some public space and some amenities. It would contemplate ground floor commercial, predominantly ground floor commercial, and then upper floors of apartment buildings. As new construction within the Heritage Preservation District, the Heritage Preservation Commission does have the ability to comment and provide for the regulation. I did make some copies of some of the materials that talk about it. And the one from the request for the proposal is the council's kind of charged you with reviewing the design, I would say size or scale, the height, and the use and site planning of the structure. Now, Matt Barowie has joined us from Bright Pixel Design. He's working with the developer on establishing site plans, elevations for buildings. I have seen some preliminary drawings, and I think we're very, very close. But I wanted to see if any members of the commission had comments on what their expectations may be, some deal breakers, if you will, if you have deal breakers on this development. The council kept talking, as it was always assumed that at some point this development would occur, is they keep talking about a design that is sympathetic and complementary to the rest of the Heritage Preservation District. There have been a couple new construction projects that had been undertaken since this was added for HPC review. One would be the Health and Human Services building at the courthouse, the rather large construction that replaced the former theater building that was there. That had gone through HPC review. The other one being the Sticks and Stones building, which was infill development, then south of River Rock, where there had been a fire of a dry cleaners there. So that site had been vacant for a number of years. If we will, I'd suggest we maybe start with the chairman to see if he had any comments, and then go through the rest of the commission so that Matt and I perhaps can get a little more direction on what some of the anticipations are. I would anticipate that Matt and I will be meeting here relatively shortly to look at some preliminary drawings, again, which I've already had a sneak preview of. But I just wanted to kind of have the Heritage Preservation Commission's kind of verbalize what maybe their expectations are to help Matt and I kind of provide some further direction. So if I guess I'd start with the chair, if he'd indulge me.
Yeah, I guess. I went downtown yesterday and walked out to the median, dodging trucks, and looked around to see what the close by buildings were like. And it's quite evident to me that a structure taller than 3 stories simply would not work. It simply wouldn't fit. At the other end of Minnesota in the business district, we have the Nicollet House Hotel, former hotel, like, well, yeah, it's an apartment building now, that has 3 full stories, and that's the tallest building that I could see. Directly across the street from the Minnesota project, Minnesota Avenue project, which is the second one here, is the IOOF building, the Oddfellows building, which is in appearance is a 3-story building. It looks like an extra tall second story on top of it. I've never been in it, but I'm guessing that there's some sort of an assembly hall up there that has a tall ceiling. And then, of course, we have the Armory just down the street, which is in the classical Armory style from around 1900, 1910, around World War I. And then on the other side of Gray Street are the beautiful storefronts that Paul Tanis and his associates have revitalized tremendously. And that they've done a beautiful job in restoring those. Of course, not full restoration in the sense of the documents that we use as our guiding documents, but using modern materials and using traditional colors and windows and that kind of thing. And the investment in that was, I think, one of the best things that happened to downtown. That corner had been Rid Electric, I guess, right? Years ago. Yeah, and Paul has made a vast improvement of that. So I guess I would like to see something that is no more than 3 stories. I understand that there's interest in having shopping retail stores on the 1st floor and maybe offices or apartments on the 2nd and perhaps 3rd floor, depending on how this all works out. And that would be okay with me. A courtyard area is fine. I think one of the things that we're going to be curious about is how parking is going to be accommodated. That parking lot back there is in horrible condition.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the issues that's going to come up. Another issue for me in terms of aesthetics is I really would not want to see a glass edifice go up the way that the buildings in Mankato have basically destroyed the old kind of architecture styles in Mankato. I'm sorry, I find that just an abomination. I did see, though, and I was down there a couple weeks ago, down on in Old Town on Riverfront Drive, on North Riverfront, there is a new building that has been put together in a way that looks pretty compatible with the kind of turn of the last century architecture styles. It's down by the Coffee Hag. Remember where that is, guys? Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you ought to get down there and take a look at that because they use actual windows, right? Not just big glass panes, but actual windows. And they use, I think it's a brown color kind of material board in between them, and come up with an appearance that none of the windows have arches the way the 1860s and 70s storefronts would and did and do. But it's a pretty good facsimile. It sort of fits pretty well as a modern building into a very traditional neighborhood. And I would hope that we could do something along those lines. So that's about what I wanted to say. Anybody else?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, Larry. And I guess I'd like to go down there and take a look at it too. But I would say that I think your concern and what you would like to see, I think it's right on the money. You don't want one of these really modern buildings that just sticks out as like a sore thumb, especially if it's 3 stories high. So I don't know how you describe that in more detail about the building that you saw, or maybe somebody could take a photo of it or something like that so that we could come up with a language that would be appropriate, as far as our recommendations.
Yeah, Judy, I've already got photos of the building that Larry's referencing, and it is on Riverfront Drive. It's like right across from where that new food hub is, where they have the food trucks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a building that I think, it's kind of a very similar historic district, very similar scale. And I think that construction was one of them that I wanted to hold out as, probably being a very appropriate scale for that neighborhood. And as Larry said, I think it can fits in, perhaps not seamlessly, but certainly appropriately and is sympathetic and complementary, I think, to the rest of the district. So.
I'd also add, I would very much like to see some Kasota stone involved in the design of things. Kitty corner across Minnesota Avenue is the old bar, the embassy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's maybe one of the oldest buildings in St. Peter, and it's built out of either Kasota stone or sandstone. I'm not sure which. But has a real old feel to it. And so getting highlights like that off of the surrounding buildings could make this project a really attractive project.
Other members, comments, statements?
Yeah, sure. I'll chime in briefly. Basically, the only things that I focus on, I agree with some of what Larry was saying, and in particular, the parking situation, I think is something to really pay attention to. And then making sure that from design, the inception of all the designs, that ADA compliance is built right into it from the get-go. That's really important to me.
And me.
Yep. Yeah. The ADA is a given. I mean, that's a requirement of the code. So.
Gotta happen.
Yep. And Matt's very familiar with the requirements of the ADA and how it can be incorporated into new construction. So certainly a lot easier than trying to make it fit in some of the old historic buildings. I see a caller who has joined us. Is that Brian?
Yeah. Hi, this is Brian. I ended up working late. Sorry. I'm just joining in.
Yep. So right now, Brian, we're discussing the potential new construction and kind of trying to get a feel for what members think is important. And Larry mentioned, restricting it to no more than 3 stories in height, compatible design. The parking on site would certainly want to be addressed. And so then we've asked other members to add any comment, and we've heard from Emily, and we'll wait to hear from Joe and Remo.
I have one other thing I want to chime in with that I thought of, and I'm reading here about the Courtyard, the potential for something to tie these buildings together. And like we've talked about on City Council quite a bit, any green space or opportunities for native plants to promote native pollinators and that kind of thing, there's been a lot of discussion around that. And, I would love to see that, having some native plantings in the area.
Okay.
It's a lot better than crumbling asphalt.
So.
Yep.
Other members want to make comment?
I'm just curious, what kind of buildings have been there in the past? Have there been any in the recent past there?
Well, there had been a gas station there.
That turned into Ginny Mae Donuts.
And it was a Ginny Mae Donuts. And when that was demoed in the early 90s, it was anticipated that there would have been a larger redevelopment in the downtown, maybe even similar to what downtown Mankato did by enclosing a block. And for any number of reasons, that project was not followed through.
They're right between the new project area, between the parking lot and the dollar store. There used to be an optician's office, Dr. Joe Sheehan. And then down Minnesota, Minnesota Avenue going south, there was the Stage Theater. And that met its demise, geez, a long time ago. 30 years ago, I think.
Yep.
And for a while, it was a furniture store with the most peculiar, sloped furniture display area you can imagine, because it was where the seating was in the theater. So it had uses, but oh yeah, and then there was Miles' shoe shop there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those were the old buildings there.
Well, if I may, I would just add, I would go for minimum development and green space, as Emily suggested. But I guess that's not what the proposal is. I heard about 3-story building, and but again, if they show us something, then I guess we can discuss it further. At this point, I would just say my preference is minimum development, green space.
Thank you, Rainbow.
Can I ask what the HPC's purview is on the scope of this project?
Sure.
I mean, I know we're talking green space and we're talking ADA and stuff like that, but is that all under the scope of the Heritage Preservation Committee?
Yeah, what I took out of the request for proposal that the city council had issued from time to time looking for development of the property, they talk about, again, a development that is sympathetic and complementary to the existing Heritage Preservation District. Then specifically in the request for proposals, it talks about the Heritage Preservation review of construction, design, size, height, scale, use, and site planning. So it is pretty encompassing on what can be there, but I would anticipate that it would be developed to a similar scale to the remaining blocks that are down there. So again, of 3-story height, likely, wall to wall, so 0 setback. And the exception here would be they'd like to have some type of a courtyard between the 2 planned buildings to provide some public space, which is again one of the council's goals for downtown development.
Okay, yeah, I think that falls. I think what Larry is saying. 3 stories. It should. I believe it should use. Materials that exist currently downtown. That would be brick and stone, I believe. Perhaps wood. No larger than 3 stories. I think we've set a precedent there and don't need the behemoth like they've got in Mankato, something like that. I think we need to limit the glass. I don't know how we do that. We certainly don't want a ultra modern looking building, but I guess as long as we're using stone and brick and a complementary design, those would be my thoughts, and I think would be our something that we would approve, I guess. But yeah, we'll have to see what comes in.
Very good.
See if Matt has anything
Uh,
to
I was gonna, can I chime in one more time here?
Sure.
I just wanted to kind of second what Remo said. I really appreciated his comments. And, as far as maybe compromise, I see the rooftop amenities on this list, and maybe the rooftop can be a green space as well. I think that's a really great thing that a lot of cities are doing, and I'd love to see that here in St. Peter. So that would be an excellent amenity, I think. A park or green space on the roof would be really neat.
That's consistent with what previous city councils have talked, maybe somewhere where they could walk their dog, but not necessarily a downtown rooftop bar, but perhaps a place where some of the residents can alternatively hang out rather than in the courtyard. So
I think there's already a precedent for that on the old Johnson building, correct?
on the where?
the Johnson building.
On the Johnson building, Johnson Overall building, the chiropractor on
Oh yeah, Dr. Moore.
Broadway and okay, Yep,
Yeah, I
on the
believe it's Dr.
southwest
Moore's
corner.
family
Yeah,
occupied the third floor there, that they did provide some rooftop amenities for their own particular use.
yeah, I think that's what I saw advertised. So, I mean, so there's precedent for that, and I don't know why that would even really be a consideration for us. You know, it wouldn't detract from the historic ilk of the building.
Very good.
Can I ask a couple questions?
That's where I was going to go next, Matt, to see if you have enough where you kind of feel like you've got a little more direction than we had before the meeting started.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for your it's not even feedback really, it's kind of like direction that really helps early on in the process. And I can already tell that everybody's kind of on the same page with this. With my discussions with the ownership group, I think you guys want what we want too, for the most part. So I think once we get something designed and over to you, I think we're really kind of all moving in the same direction on this. One addendum to what Russ had said, with the two buildings planned, the first one will be the south building, and then the second one would be the one on the north. And that's just kind of because the south building is going to be a little more symmetrical. So it'll be nicer to look at before the second one's built. And if things fall apart or whatever, and the second one didn't happen for whatever reason, then you wouldn't be stuck with the other building that's not symmetrical. So, but other than that, yeah, it's, I can say we are planning to do apartments on level 2 and 3, as well as some kind of studio apartments on level 1 in the back. And then a retail or studio open space on level 1 as well. So primarily apartment driven, with some rental space as well for whatever tenant ends up going there. Or tenants, you know, it could be 2 tenants per building. We're hoping for 1 big tenant, but you never really know who's going to need the space.
Very good. Thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I'd suggest that perhaps we're at a position where we could adjourn.
Okay, I'm going to bug out. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Look forward to hearing more.
So if there's nothing else, oh, go ahead, Judy.
Should I make a motion to adjourn then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Emily will second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody have a wonderful evening.